Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, we have over 20,000 new listeners arrive in February, so a big warm welcome if you have just discovered us. And please, DM me or send me an email. Tell me where you found the podcast, where you listen in the world, and feel free to send over any questions that you might have. A big part of this podcast is us all talking and collaborating together, sharing ideas and fixing problems. And also remember, if you leave a rating and review, take a screenshot, send it over to me, and I'll give you a shout out. And I'm easy to find, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. So I'll await your questions. But on with today's podcast. And today I've invited Darren Person onto the show. And he is the Global Chief Information Officer from the NPD Group. And as Global CIO, Darren leads NPD's technology group, encompassing the company's operations and technology organisations, and he's also responsible for spearheading the development of NPD's next generation platform, which addresses their clients' needs through innovations in data and analytics. But today we're going to learn more about his story and also explore the opportunities beyond Silicon Valley, where to find the best tech jobs across the US, and also advice on how to find the right company to further your career in tech, and maybe offer a few tips on why investing in a career in technology, reskilling, or joining a career in tech could be the best investment you could make. But enough spoilers from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where Darren Person is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Great. Neil, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here. It's good to be here with your listeners as well. So my name, Darren Person. I'm the Global CIO of a company called the NPD Group. We're a market research company focused on general merchandising. So, and maybe said a little differently, best way to think of us is we collect data on buying behavior from both things like point of sale data and our consumer data. And basically what we do with that is we then provide insights to our clients. And that's really to help them build better products that meet customer needs. So we look at the whole industry and the market. We provide a lot of insights out to manufacturers and retailers. And basically that's there to make the world for the consumer better, faster, cheaper.
Well, I'm really looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into that and some of those insights that you find hidden in all that treasure trove of data. But before we learn about your success, I always like to take my guests back in time and find out more about how they got here and what put them on this path. So I've got to ask, like those old Marvel movies, what is your origin story? Where did your passion for tech come from, and what lit that spark and put you on this path you're on now?
So it's kind of interesting. So I started in technology actually when I was about 8 years old. My sister was actually a Wang programmer way back. And my dad had bought me this Commodore 64. I had a few machines before then, but it was the 64 that actually was the one where I kind of learned a lot. And I remember my sister putting me on her lap, and we had gotten one of these books. And in the back of the book was this program that would look like an eternity, and we started filling it in and writing it. And then when we hit the run button, all the things that happened on the screen just fascinated me. That was what I would call my magic moment. It was really the thing where I realized, like, this is something that I feel really interested in. And this notion that you can create something out of nothing was really this amazing experience. And from that moment on, it really has driven me from that point forward in thinking about technology, how to use technology. And then as I got a little bit older, it was really about how to solve problems with technology. So for example, my dad was an insurance salesman, and he would go out and knock on doors. That was the way you sold insurance back in the day. And there were things that he did as part of the process of running down to what was called the Hall of Records. Anytime a new homeowner bought a house, there was a central system where they kept track of all of that. Probably by the time I was 12 or 13, they had put some of that stuff, I want to say online, but back then online meant was able to be accessed through a modem. So I remember sitting with my dad and working with him to automate the process of getting that list. He would normally drive down to this hall of records at 6 a.m. in the morning on Fridays, get the list, come back, write letters to potential customers. And it would consume a huge amount of his time doing that. And then what I did is I wrote a couple of small programs. And this is back on Windows 3.1. So, bear with me. This is some older stuff. But I wrote some programs that would automatically log in. He no longer had to go down to this hall of records. It would automatically download the file. I built this word merge program that would merge the names. So he no longer had to sit there and write out everyone's letters. And then all he had to do was really stamp them, stuff them, stamp them, and send them to the post office. And that experience was it really was fascinating because there's a few things that it did for me. It gave me more time with my dad because he spent less time doing all of this stuff for work. And it really started to show me the value of applying technology to business problems and the things that we could do to help people and how technology can actually be used to facilitate more time focusing on higher value activities. And that part was really exciting for me.
I love that. What a great story. And also I love how it was technology that helped bring you and your dad closer together and spend more time together as well. It also gave me a few flashbacks. We must be of a similar age because I too had that Commodore 64 and spent hours copying in them programs and all that language for 3-4 hours at a time. And you must have been a lot better than me, though, because whenever I hit the run button, there was then about a half hour to an hour of correcting all the syntax errors and debugging, as they would call it now. But that was a bit of a thing too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that because, I get that question a lot around, you said it best, what lit the spark? Yeah. And I was looking for some way to explain it to people, and the best way I can do it is I think back, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Right. The character Will that's played by Matt Damon, where he's explaining to the young woman in front of him. I don't know if it was his girlfriend at the time, but he was explaining to her hey, look, I can't play the piano and write you a symphony, but when it came to things like math and science for him, he could just play. Yeah. And I kind of felt like that with technology. I certainly can't paint you a picture, right? That's not my expertise, is looking at a canvas and just painting something that comes from the out of my mind. But when it came to programming and computers in general, they just kind of made sense. And that was kind of the best way I can kind of correlate it, at least for those that saw the movie, as to how I think about or how I look at what led me where I am.
And as you said, it was that path that you took there that led you to NPD, which is a global market information company, which offers data, industry expertise and prescriptive analytics. But can you tell the listeners that might be hearing about you for the very first time and possibly give them an overview of the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses?
I kind of bucket it into two problems, and it's kind of actually goes into the story that I just shared with you. On one side, it was a technology problem, right? If you think about my story of my dad, how do I use technology to solve some of the issues? Things like if the information available and how would I bring it in and what programs would I write? And then on the flip side, it was about how do I help him be successful in doing what he does? And when you look at NPD, I think of it that almost in those same two buckets. On one side, we have a big data problem. NPD's data set is massive. We aggregate tremendous amounts of data, we process it, and then we really prepare it for analysis and analytics. So just to give you a sample or an idea, we process upwards of 6 billion transactions a month. Yeah, I said it. That's billions, right? So it really is a technology challenge. How do you get all of that data processed and analyzed? By the way, every single week, every single month, that data comes in. So that problem number one is really a technology problem that's super exciting and hard to solve. And then the second problem that we try to solve is really how do you then wade through all of that data, right? Applying our industry expertise, because we have some amazing people at NPD that just know the industry inside and out. And then how do we help them offer up insights to clients on how they should be thinking about everything from And I mean, today it's even more relevant than ever. Things like supply chain, or even what features they should be building into their next product that customers will want to purchase. So all of those kinds of end-to-end processes are some really, really interesting and complex challenges, but also I think some things that really turn us into more tangible outcomes, both for our clients, but actually if you think about it even further downstream, when you go and buy that pair of sneakers from the shelf, a lot of the insights really drove into the color, whether it's leather, whether the materials that are being used. That's all driven by some of the analytics and insights that we provide to our clients.
And just to bring some of that to life, in the US, many people listening will know about there's a lot of people, especially in the tech community, leaving places like California where real estate is incredibly expensive and heading for a better standard of living in places like Texas. And even before the pandemic hit, I did a lot of work in Arizona and GPEC, and they were attracting people outside of California into Phoenix for those same reasons. But if there is anyone listening anywhere in the world that are looking for opportunities beyond Silicon Valley, I'm curious, from all the data that you've got access to, where is the best place to find tech jobs across America right now?
So I have to tell you, the pandemic has really driven a lot of hard things in the world, right? And if you can put aside a lot of the craziness and obviously a number of the sad stories that have happened, the one thing that the pandemic did do is accelerate companies' ability to explore, or I shouldn't say explore, but companies' ability to expand into remote work. So I think this is a huge opportunity for people to really start to split work and personal life in a way that helps them meet and find the right balance of work. So I think the best place is the company that really fits your core values, your cultural values, the things that are important to you. And then as far as an actual location goes, today it's now possible, especially in technology specifically, to really work from anywhere. And I think that's what you're finding. You're finding people finding the right balance of where to live and how to separate their personal lives, things like income and the schools for their kids, and being able to pick that separate from where their job is located. And I think that's just not across the US. I think that's globally now, across the board. So I think a lot of that new flexibility that's now really starting to comb in opens up the opportunity for you to go find the best company for you to work with, irrespective of the location of where you work. And I think that's a really nice future direction as we go forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it definitely is a global thing. I've done a lot of work with Australian and New Zealand companies remotely, and they've been telling me that traditionally they've relied on tech talent from around the world, but when the countries shut up their borders they're currently in a position now where I think there's something like 30,000 vacancies in cybersecurity that are completely unfilled. So as traditional roles start to disappear and things like automation coming, they're on this big drive to try and get people to retrain and reskill and enter the world of tech for the first time. So I'm curious on that side of things. Do you think anyone thinking of entering the tech industry anywhere in the year, do you think that's a good move and a good investment?
A little biased in my answer, obviously. I've told I'll tell you what I've told my children. Yeah. What I've told them is, if this is where your interests lie and your passion lie, I highly recommend technology. I said, even if your interests don't exactly lie here, I don't think there's anything or any harm that will come from them taking the time to learn about and spend some of their class curriculum understanding technology going forward. I think it just pays dividends. It's paid dividends my entire career in general. The other thing that I love about technology, and why I do think and agree with you that I think it is a good investment, is you're never too late to do technology. It's hard to explain that to people, right? Some people are like, oh my God, there's all these things. There's this cloud thing now, and it's so big, and I don't even know where to start. I think the one thing about technology, the only constant in technology is change. Right? Whether it's programming languages that are coming out every single day, new languages, new ways of working, new ways of applying technology, or even just new technologies. So one of the exciting things about technology to me is And again, now for me, it's exciting. For other people who really just like learning one thing and kind of becoming that expert in just that one thing is slightly different. But I think for me, if you're really interested in change, if you enjoy things changing, if you enjoy learning new things regularly, I think technology is great because you can always enter the field of technology and always be at some beginning point and at the end of another point. And you see that in that cyclical format of I kind of call it the life cycle of technology, right? There's always something new quickly coming in to replace something old. And I think that's super fascinating. But again, I think that's also a personal objective as to what fits you best and whether you're comfortable with that change being more of a constant than a constant being a constant.
Yeah, 100% with you on that. And what about on finding the right company to furthering a career in tech? Is there any tips that you would offer to anyone listening around that?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So about maybe a few months ago, I actually wrote an article for Forbes. It literally was called "Choosing the Right Company to Further Your Tech Career." So for anyone that's interested in reading the full article, you could just Google my name and that title, and you can read about it. But maybe some key themes I'll share here for your readers, just to spare them some of the longer reading. Look, the first thing we talked about was being honest, right? Especially with yourself. And what that means is make sure your skills are up to date with the role that you're applying for. If you're applying for an AI and machine learning role, make sure that you've done some level of AI and machine learning and you're interested in that area to go. The second thing is really around choosing the right sector, which is it's really about finding a company that links your interests and your interest to the outcomes that company delivers, right? Because what you do, you may be a technology person, or you may be a marketing person, or you may be a salesperson. You really do have to make sure that you enjoy or see some opportunities in what the company that you're working for ultimately delivers. Like, I enjoy the fact that I'm changing the world for consumers. That's been exciting. But the company that I was at before tend to be about scientific research. And I loved the idea that the work that I was doing helped in some way, shape, or form, maybe further downstream, cure some disease or help find a cure for a disease. Like, those things are really interesting. And that also gave me a little bit more of an outside in perspective, not just of what I was doing, but that I was associated with something bigger and more impactful. The third is, constantly weigh your place in a company. You have to decide, do you like being a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? I think knowing what you like to do, knowing how you like to work, it's kind of a similar model when you choose a university to go to. Do you like a small university and more hands-on approach? Do you prefer a bigger school? Gives you more breadth and around what you're researching. So I think making sure you always know the company you're going into, the size and scale of it, and whether that's comfort for you. The fourth is really understanding company culture. So how do you make sure that culture aligns to your own values, your own core values? And I think that's stuff that you get when you meet with the people in the company during your interview process. So make sure you spend a lot of time when you're interviewing, really trying to understand what that company's core values are and make sure that they align to yours. And then really the last one is just about being bold, right? Take some risks, especially when you're early in your career. It's a great opportunity to try new things, find out what you like, find out what you don't like. And then as you get further along in your career, think about the things that are most important to you and what really is that value proposition for you, whether you enjoy the work, whether you enjoy the people you're working with, whether you're working for. I think all of those things kind of mold together. So I wish I could give you one simple answer. To me, it's a variety of things that have to be thought about in that ecosystem.
And I suspect there will be a lot of people listening around the world that are in the tech industry already, and they're incredibly comfortable. In fact, they've probably been in that same role for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. They know the job inside out, and they want to progress, but also a little bit nervous about doing so. So what do you think the secret is of knowing when you're ready to take that next step in your tech career? Is there any advice you could offer around that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I have to tell you, there's no secret. You never feel ready to take that next step, but you more than likely are already ready to take that step. But there, unfortunately, there's no litmus thing that says, okay, I've been a director for this long, and these 3 check marks tell me I'm ready to move into a VP role or a programmer to a senior programmer role. So, I think that the real secret is knowing what you want. I have found that because I knew what I wanted to do at a young age, I didn't exactly know what the role would be or the title would be, but I knew what I wanted to do. That helped me figure out what were the right steps in achieving what I wanted to do. It also let me decide help me decide on what are the things that I wouldn't do or that would be counterintuitive to where I wanted to go. So I think the first thing is I'd always try to find someone that embodies where you'd like to be in the future, and then talk to them about what are the things that they did, what decisions did they make along their career journey that would be insights into yours. And then really that last thing, and maybe even tying back to my last answer, is be bold. You're probably not, quote, ready from your internal feeling of whether you're ready to take that next step, but you probably are. And I'll leave you with one story. So I remember I was at this pivot point between exactly this, like moving into that next role, that next level. And personally, I wanted it. I didn't feel ready for it. And I remember coming home, and I was married at the time, and I was given this opportunity to take this next step. And I remember actually having anxiety about whether or not I should do it. Like, what if I'm not good at it? What if I fail? And I remember my wife sitting down with me, and she's always my rock in a lot of this stuff. And she's like, look, you got to give it a shot, right? Like, you clearly want something like this. This is clearly where you think you want to go. There's probably never the right time that you're going to feel that you're ready to do it. She goes, so take the leap of faith and go with it. And you work hard, that you're committed. There's very little that you can't achieve when you have those kinds of attributes. And I did. And I have to tell you, it was one of the best career decisions I made, both from I loved what I was doing. It gave me a bit more responsibility that was what I was looking for at the time. I think it's the thing that helped set me up. So I don't know if you'll ever feel ready, but just know that when the opportunity comes, don't let that be the reason you don't take it.
Love that. And another positive change I've seen in the tech industry and in business in general over the last few years is traditionally it was the loudest voice in the room that made all those important decisions, and often they were ill-informed or maybe just a hunch. Whereas now businesses seem to be taking a much more data-driven approach to decision making. Is that something you're seeing? And can you expand on the importance of data-driven decision making across any organization in any industry too?
No, I absolutely. In fact, if there was one other thing that the pandemic drove, it was clarity about the importance of data in making decisions. NPD specifically, our data really became important both in understanding past trends and future trends. Similarly, internally, using data to drive some of the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. Understanding metrics, creating a focus for the company. What are you trying to achieve, and how do you turn that into something that can be measured, managed, and monitored across the board? So I think data is continually growing. The amount of data that we're collecting on everything is getting larger and larger. Of course, it requires the systems to be able to kind of go through all of that and make sense of it. But if you can really come up with a number of metrics that are core KPIs, if you want to call them, if you can really kind of focus on those key metrics, I think that is really what's helping drive some of not just the decisions, but also the great outcomes that a lot of companies are seeing.
And something else we alluded to earlier in our conversation today was that huge tech skills gap all over the world, really, with there being more vacancies than people trained and ready to do that job. So is there any advice you'd offer to any CIOs around building a future-proof tech workforce too?
Yeah, look, I think the number one thing is we have a lot of people actually going into technology. So there's been some great advances. in women in technology, in DEI, across the board. I think there's a number of a growing field of our tech force. At the same time, though, we need to be more proactive as CIOs in sponsoring and educating those programs and committing our time and as well as some of our money to really helping future-proof a lot of that workforce. I think of it very much like what Apple did in the early 80s, where they seeded the high schools and the public schools with computers. And then if you think about that, it did two things. One is it increased brand loyalty to a very young generation. And the second thing is it exposed people to technology and made it less scary for them. And when you then fast forward to things like the iPod, the iPhone, and some of the devices that are now there, I do feel like there's a link between some of that work that was done early on as well as that. So I think for CIOs, that's a big part. And the best way to bulletproof, our workforce for the future is making sure that we have a very good pipeline of well-educated team members that are coming up where we've invested in them early on in their careers and have carried them forward into their professional careers.
Excellent. And we began the podcast today talking about your origin story, but we've come full circle now. So I'm going to ask if there's a song, piece of music, movie or book or anything that has inspired you or helped you or accompanied you in your career. Do you have a choice and a story behind it? And maybe we can leave the listeners on a somewhat of an inspirational note.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate it. And again, thanks for having me on. So I'll tell you, it's a book. Yeah. And I read this book a number of years ago. So the book's called Inspired. It's How to Create Tech Products Customers Love. It's written by a gentleman by the name of Marty Cagan, Cagan. And it links together technology. So if you think about it, the problem, I kind of broke things into two things, right? The problem and then the outcome. So it links together technology and how technology operates with the creation of products. And for me, I've always used this term of like creating magic moments for the end user. So that book kind of brings both of those worlds together. And I was never very good at writing a book about things that I thought about. But as I read that book, and I thought it was great because it's actually titled Inspired, it really did put together a lot of the thinking that I've had throughout my career of ways to make cool products that customers really love, but by applying technology. So for me, it really was this really neat linchpin. In fact, when I joined NPD, one of the first things I did was ordered a whole bunch of books and gave them out across the company. So that is definitely one of my favorite books. I think it kind of wraps together a lot of the things that I think are important. And I think everyone should have that on their bookshelf and at least having read it once.
Awesome. I'll add that to our Amazon wish list so people can find that nice and easily. I love that, what you did there as a leader and buying books for the company, encouraging people to read them. That's amazing. A great move on your part there. But before I let you go, for anyone listening just wanting to find out more information about NPD, the kind of work you're doing and anything we talked about today, including your work on your Forbes column too, when's the best starting point to find all that information?
No, yeah, and thank you again. So about NPD, there's really two ways. You can go to our website. So it's www.npd.com. If you're looking for careers, just throw a / in there and type the word careers. So we have a great bunch of recruiting, our recruitment team. They're always looking for people who are really excited about what we do. You can also email them at careers@npd.com. And then if you want to follow me, I'm on LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn /IN and then my name, Darren Person. Or if you want to follow me on Twitter, my tag is @Darren S. Person. So S is my middle initial. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and certainly reach out to us at NPD for anyone that's interested in exploring an opportunity. And you can always reach out directly to me. I'm always happy to chat.
Well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode, just so people can find out more information about you. One of the things that really shines from your conversation today is how your passion for driving that technology, that vision, strategy and execution and everything from cloud migration to implementations, data and analytics, but all to create magic moments for consumers. And I think what was especially memorable is the story behind that and how you got here and what led you to that, all starting from those days on the Commodore 64 and the work you did with your dad. But thank you so much for sharing all that with me today.
Neil, thank you and all your listeners for taking the time to listen to some of that stuff too. So really appreciate it.
We covered so much there, didn't we? From knowing when you're ready to take that next step in your tech career. And as I said in the show, that I know there's going to be a lot of people that are quite safe. They've been doing the same role for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe thinking about making that move, maybe putting self-limitations on how far they can go. But trust me, you can take it as far as you want it to. So please, if you are thinking of making that move, if you just need some words of encouragement, give me a shout. I'll help anyone in any way that I can. And we also talked about the importance of data-driven decision-making across organisations. It's something we're seeing more and more now, and I think it can only be a good thing, especially if we're moving away from that loudest voice in the room making all the decisions. It should be about making those data-driven decisions. But these are just a few things that I took from our conversation today. What about you? As always, let's keep this conversation going. Email me, tweet me, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. I'm easy to find. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And let's continue to help each other on this crazy journey we call life. But that's it for today. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.